Nice to see you all. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah. Sometimes I mumble a bit, so I mumble too much or speak too fast, which is another thing I sometimes do. Would you please tell me? All right, because I want you to be able to hear me. Question for you. When you woke up this morning, did you breathe in or breathe out? Seriously? Was it an in-breath or an out-breath, the first breath? Oh, in-breath, was it? You sure? Yeah. Excellent. Right. When you were born, was it an in-breath or an out-breath? Yes, in-breath. I mean, that first breath is amazing if you think about it. Right? I mean, the things that actually physiologically have to happen to enable that, because the breathing bits of your brain haven't worked before. If you think about it, you've been in the womb, those breathing bits of the brain have never done anything. They're waiting to go, but they haven't done anything. So that journey when you come out, that first breath, not only that, but the blood flow, from the heart has never been through the lungs before. All right? So that heart has to change its function. The hole in the heart has to close. That blood has to flow up through the lungs, all on that first breath. And most of the time, I mean, look around you, most of the time, it works really well. A few problems from time to time, holes in the heart, that kind of thing. But mostly it works really well. It's pretty impressive. Yeah? It's phenomenal, in fact. All right? So, everybody breathes. You notice that? Yeah? What I want you to do now for a second or two is I want you to just hold your breath for as long as you can. No cheating. Yeah? Put your hand up when you've finished holding your breath. Okay? Just hold for as long. It's competition. Okay? There'll be a prize. I'm mucking around with that bit. But excellent, well done. Put your hands up when you breathe. Still holding your breath? Somebody still holding your breath? Good. Stay with it. That's about 30 seconds, 40 seconds so far. I'm guessing a bit on the time. Nice, well done. Okay, great. Are you still holding the breath? Good, stay with it then. No cheating, mind. Okay, do you know something? Do you know the best place to hold your breath? Do you know where the best place to hold your breath is? Don't do this you never do this by yourself, by the way. Just saying, just to be absolutely clear, you never practice this by yourself. You have to have somebody with you. All right? The best place to hold your breath, because you can't cheat, is where? In the water. That's right. That's right. Okay? So I'm going to talk a little bit about breath holding. One of the things I'm going to talk about is breath holding the breath, and how and why it's an amazing thing to do. Right? Also, I want to talk about other kinds of conscious breath practice, because everybody breathes unconsciously. Yeah? From the day we're born until the last breath, which suddenly becomes really important. Yeah? Then it's all of a sudden breathing is important. And most of the time in the middle, between the first breath, apart from when you're running for a bus and you breathe out breath or whatever, until that last breath, people don't pay any attention to breath at all. It just happens. And it does a remarkable job of it. It happens and it does a remarkable job. Yeah? Pretty impressive system. Do you know that unless you're ill, I mean, do you know anything about anybody physiologists or doctors or anything like that in the room? No? Okay, great. Relief. No, seriously, I was a biologist once. So my initial background was a biologist. So I kind of know my stuff to a degree. So I'll be using some of that information. But the blood pigment is called hemoglobin, the red colour in your blood. Yeah? Is hemoglobin, which is an iron-based pigment. It's phenomenal pigment. It really is pretty amazing, right? And it carries so much oxygen so successfully around the body, right? So that even if you sit around on chairs all day long, which is, by the way, one of the worst things you can do for your body, yeah? Just so you know. Chairs are horrific for the human body, yeah? Then even if you do that all day long, your blood will still run, the oxygen in the hemoglobin will still run around about 96, 97, 98% saturation. It's doing an awesome job. Not only that, it sucks oxygen up out of those lung tissues, it carries around your body and it drops it off just where it's needed extremely well, which is why it's such a good pigment. Right? Nearly all living things use hemoglobin. There's a few that don't. Some insects, for example, they use a green version, but a different kind of pigment, all right? So you see some insects' blood is green, right? But nearly everything uses that because it's so phenomenal at doing that job of sucking up oxygen in an oxygen-rich environment and putting it where it's needed in an oxygen-poor environment and letting go of it. It doesn't grip hold, it lets go. All right? So that's why we're alive. That's why we're here. So, there are a few questions on there. What does it say? Oh, it says why, how, when, and in what way. Conscious breathing I'm talking about. I'm talking about conscious breath practice, which is not just random everyday breathing, but actually utilizing the breath to change states and do things with. Now, a lovely talk we had about creativity, for example. We can use breath to take yourself into a deeply creative state. Because one of the things you can do with breath is you can change your brainwave states. And you know about brainwaves? You heard about brainwaves? Great. So for example, let's do a little practice first of all, okay? Really rapid one, very easy. So if you can sit on the chair, sit upright a bit. So if you slump in the chair like this, yeah? This is one of the reasons why, get across the light. One of the reasons why chairs are so awful is because when it does this to your body like this, all right? So the spine goes into flexion, closes the diaphragm around here, and it's much harder to successfully breathe, all right? Okay, so if you sit upright in the chair as best as you can. Yeah. Now close your eyes for a moment. And instantly by closing your eyes, what you've done is you've taken your brain into a different brainwave state. Okay? You've shut down the visual cortex. There's much less information coming to the brain from the eyes. And we're about 70% visual, most of us. If you want to test that, then try balancing on one leg with your eyes closed, and you'll notice you can't do it. But your eyes don't do the balancing, but your ears do. Yeah? So you notice just how reliant we become on vision. So already your brain's changing state. You're dropping into the beginnings of an alpha state. Beta brainwave state is everyday chatter, chatter, chitter, chatter. Yeah? Talk, talk, that kind of thing. And the alpha state is where you're going into a gentle state of relaxation. If you go deeper into alpha state, it's the kind of state you go into when you're just about to fall asleep. Now then, start to bring your attention to the breath. Just notice the breath first of all. And for a minute maximum, what I want you to do is just notice the breath and see if you can keep your attention on the breath. Notice when your attention goes off the breath. Yeah? Because it's highly likely to. Okay, that'll do. Open your eyes. Does anybody manage to sustain their attention on the breath completely and utterly? No. It's really difficult. That's why Buddhist meditation practices, mindfulness of breathing, which is a Buddhist meditation practice, yeah, it's called Shila. That's why it's so darn difficult, all right? Because we're so hooked up on paying attention to what the brain is saying in terms of thinking, yeah? Think. And our identification, our energy, if you like, goes into the thought process. It's really difficult for us to sustain attention on breath. And yet, the interesting thing about breathing, like it says, there's some old Vedic text called the Upanishads. Anybody heard of them? Yeah? Great. The Upanishads. Well, there's some stories in there about different body parts and how they're having a squabble with each other about which body part is the most supreme and the most precious and everything else like that. And they're all arguing. The legs are arguing with the heart, and the heart's arguing with the lungs. And then breath comes in and says, I've had enough of this boring conversation. I'm off. Yeah? And they all go, no. Yeah? So, you know, it's really interesting that we can't pay attention to the breath. It's a struggle. Yeah? So training your mind. One of the mind training practices is to focus on the breath and to keep doing it, and to keep doing it, and to keep doing it. And you train that pattern so that eventually you can do it for an hour or more, really successfully. Yeah? And in the process of doing that, it trains your brain. Your brain function, yeah, and your brain structure changes. We know this now from Western science because we've got lots of research on meditation and breath work, and more is coming in about just how the brain changes when we start doing some of these funny old practices from Asia. Yeah? Yeah? So we've got very clear understandings, or relatively clear understandings. There's a guy called Mingya Rinpoche. I've got a picture of him up on, if I get through the presentation, there's a picture of Mingya Rinpoche up there. He was put in an fMRI scanner in the States. And that's what kicked off a lot of the research into meditation and mindfulness. Because when he went into that machine, the machine went haywire. Yeah? And the people doing the research had never, ever seen an fMRI scanner do what it did when he was in that machine. He had 62,000 hours of meditation under his belt. He was a young man. He was about 30-something at the time, but he'd spent his whole life in Tibetan Buddhist meditation practice. Yeah? 62,000 hours. And that machine went silly. They just didn't know what it was doing. They'd never seen that before. They didn't know what questions to ask. He went off back to the hills again. They'd kind of blown it, except for the fact they'd found a new brainwave state, yeah? Called gamma synchrony. Right? So that was the beginning of a lot of research into mindfulness and meditation and this kind of thing. Mindfulness, by the way, is translated from a Sanskrit word. It's a really bad translation. Right? The Sanskrit word actually is smriti. smriti, right? And the Pali word, which is where mindfulness comes from, is sati. So, and what smriti means is remembrance. It means remembrance. It means a remembrance of what you truly are. What you were talking about. It's remembrance of what you truly are. So the practices that have been translated into West as mindfulness are actually remembrance of what you truly are. Yeah? And they're a baseline practice, a basic practice to come back into presence. Does that make sense? Yeah? So what I want to talk to you about is much more than just mindfulness. The mindfulness is fantastic. Smriti is fantastic. It's about creating states of optimal flow, peak performance, and power, and creativity. Yeah? So you can use breath, and when you understand the mind and you can focus the mind, you can do just about anything you want to do. Yeah? Because you're creating those optimal states and getting them as part of your life every single day. Sounds like a plan. You like it? There's a catch. You know there's a catch. What's the catch? Go on, tell me. What? You've got to do some work. Yeah, that's why it's often called breath work, by the way. Yeah? You've got to do the work. You've got to do the discipline. You can't take a tablet and get it yet. It's not quite like the Matrix yet where you can download it. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't work quite like that, all right? So we're going to answer some of these questions anyway. There's some people who are famous breath masters. Do you know any of these people? Do you know this guy? Anybody heard of him? Stig of R. Severinsen. I work with him. I'm one of his master instructors, in fact. So there's only 4 of us in the world, all right? Just so you know. Yeah, you've got to do it. You've got to do it, you know what I mean? He held his breath underwater for 22 minutes and 10 seconds. So a little micro hold we did earlier on, yeah? So he can focus his mind well enough to relax into really difficult physiology and hang out there underwater for 22 minutes and 10 seconds. I do breath holding with them when I go to Denmark to work with them. Right? It's one of the things we do there. All right? And we consider 5 minutes underwater to be the marker point of where you hold, where you really start to get kind of interesting. All right? And the secret is relaxation. The secret is relaxation. It's allowing yourself to feel into, you get in there after about 2.5, 3 minutes, the diaphragm starts to go, the big breathing muscle, I'll show you a picture of it later on, okay? That starts to kick off. Yeah? And you've got to relax into it, not panic. Okay? Now, I teach a lot of breath holding work in the yoga practices I teach. I teach a lot of dry land, we call it dry land breath holding. Rather than in water, we do dry land breath holding. All right? And that's really interesting stuff because, of course, the brain mechanisms that make you breathe in are in the brainstem. It's a bit called the medulla oblongata, just if you're interested, all right? That brain mechanism, what it does is it kicks in when the carbon dioxide in your blood gets high enough for you not to tolerate it, then it makes you breathe in. All right? So it's carbon dioxide in the blood that makes you breathe in, not lack of oxygen. All right? So what you're doing is you're learning to tolerate high levels of carbon dioxide in your system. And what that does then is it calms the brainstem down. Because otherwise what the brainstem does is make you panic. So most people are walking around in a state of gentle panic a lot of the time, quietly. The physiology is just gently panicking away. Yeah? So what you do when you start breath holding is you're learning to actually chill out. Yeah? You're learning to tolerate that physiological discomfort, relax into it more and more and more over time, because you do a bit every single day. It's daily discipline. And gradually you get into that place where there's a lot more resilience in the system. There's lots of side effects, which will come out later, some really good side effects I'll talk about later on. All right? So that's Stig up here. There he is there as well, playing, mucking around. He's got loads of gold medals and Guinness records for all sorts of free diving. He's a free diver. Lots of free diving stuff, yeah? Deepest dive, longest dive. That's him swimming under the ice here. He did the longest swim under ice of any known human being. 1 breath, in his Speedos, underneath the ice. Okay? That kind of stuff, all right? So when we go there, we work with Olympic athletes. We work a lot of champions. We're talking about champion practice. I was working with a white guy, Michel, who's trains Olympic athletes. And he's talking about the champion mindset. Yeah, you have to have a champion mindset. So, but he's taking it into the world, saying everybody can have that. And breath holding and working with breath is a way of accessing a particular, focused, powerful, optimal flow mindset. That makes sense? And you've got it to hand, you've got it right available for you because you've got it, here it is in your body, you breathe. You learn how to work with that. Yeah? This chappie here, Wim Hof, you heard of him? A lot of people have heard of Wim Hof. Now, of course, he's climbed Kilimanjaro in his underpants and all that kind of thing, yeah? Yeah, Iceman, they call him the Iceman. Actually, Stig swum further under ice than Wim has, but whatever, they're both interesting, yeah? Then there's lots of other people as well, like Max Strom, I know Max as well, so I know these people, yeah? So Max Strom as well, famous guy doing breath work. And this is the next big wave coming through. Yoga's over, because yoga's been diluted to the maximum by the Western world, all right, just saying. What they do, the Western world grabs a little piece of something and sells it. So the physical practices of yoga, which is just one tiny part of yoga, have been sold and replicated through, industry after industry, and are now kind of diluted down to the maximum, which is a shame, because yoga is actually an awesome practice. And the kind of breath work we're talking about here is actually yogic, which I'll talk about in a minute. All right? So, there we go. There's a Tibetan monk being checked up. This is a practice. I'll put these pictures up here. Oh, this is Samantabhadra and Samantabhadrini. You don't know them, obviously, unless you're a Buddhist monk. Do you know these characters? Tattooed on my arm, look, there they are. Right? Because that's the Nyingma Buddhist thing. I just put them up there as an honorific, just to understand where these practices come from. These practices where people are working with inner lines inside the body, yeah, centers inside the body, energy lines and flow, which you mentioned as well. Yeah, this is the practice of Tunmo. And Tunmo, I worked with a chappie, 15 years ago. I'll tell you a story. 15 years ago, I was teaching yoga in Zinal at the European Yoga Conference, all right? And I met this lovely guy called Michel up there, Frenchman. He had virtually no English. He was very funny, yeah? 84 years old. Yeah, spent a lot of time in Tibet, and he'd learnt Tunmo over there. So I met him in Zinal, and we were sat above the snow line, 3,000 meters up, sat above the snow line, naked, in the snow, for an hour and a half in the morning before the sun came up. That was the practice every morning, all right? Now, I promise you, yeah, we were facing east, all right? We're facing east. So by the time, an hour and a half later, and sometimes the wind coming around the mountain was like seriously cold, yeah? So when the sun came up over the mountain on the far side of the valley, you could feel the rays of the sun coming up the mountain towards you. And by the time it hit the body, it was just like, oh, an explosion of bliss. Yeah, that was 15 years ago doing that practice. But of course, this comes from Tibet, where these guys, they douse themselves in cold water, put wet robes around themselves, and then have to dry them with their body heat, with the capacity to visualize, imagination, visualization. This is a visualization practice. These people do this thing with their mind. All right? We know nothing here. All right? Wim Hof, I saw a picture on, can boost his immune function by 300%. He's been tested now in university in Holland. 300% he can rack his immune system up. 400% he can increase his metabolic rate at will. Now, this is stuff that in the Western medical models, of course, they say is not possible. You can't do that. It's all involuntary. Sorry, you can. All right? So we're on the edge of something really, really fantastic in the modern world, because we're beginning to pay attention to stuff that people have been doing for a very long time in other parts of the world, which now we know is not just fairy stories. I've got some pictures of muscles here because I want you to feel into your body a little bit about just all the stuff that's going on. All right? First of all, if you touch your collarbone, yeah, that bone there at the top there, do you know how many creatures have that? I ask you, does a dog have a collarbone? Yes or no? Guess. No? How do you know? Or is it? Yes. It doesn't. A dog does not have a collarbone. Does a cat have a collarbone? No, it doesn't. Does any other quadruped, thing that walks around on four legs, have a collarbone? No. All right? Anything that's ever walked on four legs does not have a collarbone. It's a very rare thing, the collarbone. As is the arches of your feet. Does anything else have an arch to its foot? No. It's unique. Right? What about the nuchal ligament on the back of the neck or the Achilles tendon? Well, they're unique too. Just saying. All right? So, the collarbone, you only find the collarbone, yeah, because you look at a dog's structure, its shoulder blades actually come around the side of the body, like her big fat chest. Its chest is like a barrel this way, or a cat, yeah, if you think about the dog, any dogs you know, yeah. The chest is kind of like that, and the shoulder blades sort of sit around the side, yeah, and the legs are tucked underneath at the front like this, yeah. Right? So to go from there, back to there, the thinning of the chest, pushing the shoulder blades open, what kind of creature has a collarbone? Do you know? Well, things that hang in trees. It's really neat for separating the shoulder blades and hanging in trees. In fact, the forearms of human beings as well are unlike those of cats and dogs, but they're rather darn similar to other things that have hung in trees or do hang in trees. Because the structure, it's not a compressive structure, it's a tensile web through there. There's all sorts of stuff, all right? We have do anybody know about the term fascia? Another popular term these days. Have you heard the word fascia? Yeah. Fascia is the connective tissue in the body. It's been, again, accepted around about, lots of new stuff, accepted around about the year 2000 as probably, and people are beginning to think of it as the biggest organ in the body. It's got more nerve endings in it than anything else, and it wraps around and contains all the cells of your body. So everything is held in a web of fascia, right? It's gel solid, the stuff that is very liquid and it's got sort of elastic filaments in it, and it can change shape from very jelly-like to liquid-like, yeah, depending on how it's moved, right? Electromagnetism flows through it. Ions, it's can't remember which round it is. It's charged up there one way, charged down there. There's an ionic flow that flows through us. We are electromagnetic, right? And that flow through us, when it flows well, according to yogic stories, keeps us well. When it doesn't flow well, we get sick. Our immune function doesn't work as well, and we get ill. Yeah? By the way, sitting around on chairs is one of the worst things you can do for that flow. Breathing and moving is really, really important. Breathing is super powerful to keep that flow working well. That's what the stories say, right? We're gradually coming to that understanding in the Western world. If you want to stay well, so another interesting story for you. Chinese medical doctors, I studied Chinese medicine a long time ago, and Indian medicine, Ayurveda as well. But Chinese medical doctors, they were not paid when their clients got sick because they'd failed at their job. So the job of the Chinese medical doctor traditionally, not so much nowadays, but traditionally, was to keep their clients well. So they had to look at diet, movement, breath, all the different, back in the day, 40 years ago, I was studying Qigong. Do you know Qigong? Yeah, great stuff. That's a bit of iron shirt Qigong there for you. Mantak Chia. I worked with Mantak Chia as well. Interesting fellow, all right? So that Qigong practices, those breath, movement, energy practices are designed to keep you well. Because if you stay well, you don't get ill, you don't have to fix it. Hey, let's get the NHS on that, shall we? What a good idea. Yeah? Right. So I call those flow medicines rather than curative or fixative medicines. Yeah? And the intention with breath work is to be able to stay in the place of flow, like Wim Hof's talking about, so you can rack up your immune function, so you just don't get ill. That's pretty cool, isn't it? No more sickies. Right? So let's talk a little bit about muscles. That's the diaphragm here. It's the big breathing muscle here. It sits underneath your ribs. It's got like the fibers come underneath here. And ideally, that muscle, I can't show you it now, but ideally that muscle underneath here, yeah, unless you want me to strip my clothes off, which I'm not going to do, yeah, tonight. Right underneath that muscle underneath there should be really soft and malleable, easy, no tension, no discomfort in there. Now, the problem with the diaphragm is, I want you to remember, actually, first of all, I want you to remember a time when you had some shocking, awful thing happen, just for a moment, yeah, where you felt like your survival was at stake. Can you remember that time? Just take yourself back there quickly now, yeah, and remember what you did with your breath. What did you do? Somebody? Hold it, that's right. In breath or out breath? Was it an in breath or out breath you held? In breath, that's right. Usually it's an in breath, okay? So we go back and hold your breath for a moment, yeah? And what body shape do you make when you're doing that survival type thing? It's flexion. It's that, yeah? So whenever we feel threatened, traumatized, yeah, slightly challenged, pressured, yeah, by emails, by some stranger walking down the road towards us because we are really weird because we've got our soft ventral underbelly facing the world, yeah? No other creature does that. All right? So there's a whole lot of challenges for us neurologically that we're not even aware of, all right, that our body is managing for us, yeah? And it's managing that by doing stuff with breath because that's how the body knows how to do it, all right? So you get tensions build up around the diaphragm and in the other respiratory muscles, and that's the main one is the diaphragm. And if we don't resolve those, they sit inside us, they just sit there. So some of the styles of breath work I teach a style of breathing, breath work, for example, which is traditionally was called rebirthing, but it's now conscious connected breathing is the name, all right? And what that does is you go into that breath work and it clears out any residual trauma or emotional difficulty, yeah, and brings it up for you to re-experience it, process it, integrate it, and let go of it, because it clears all that tension out of the diaphragm. When we do breath holding practices, dry breath holding practices, yeah, we do a thing called Uddiyana Mahabandha. It's a way of opening, and it's the only place you can stretch the diaphragm open. So any tension that's left in there, and if you've got tension in there, it's a really good thing to shift it, you can clear it out of the way. So we've got practices to do all sorts of stuff to radically shift and change the way your system works. Are you still interested? Yep. How interested? Really? You're going to come work with me then? Good, 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 good. Diaphragm, powerful muscle. Yeah? We can work with liberating it, we can work with strengthening it. Right? I'll just flick through some of these muscles, I won't get too much into those, but they're all involved in breathing. So all these muscles here, that's the transverse abdominals, the rectus abdominis here, yeah? And the wrapping the core of the body here. Take a breath in, put your hands on your belly. Can you breathe into your belly? Modern people are too busy to finish the out breath. People do shallow breathing mostly, but if you take a big breath into your belly, make it big and round, and then breathe out. Some of you might be doing reverse breathing, which is where you breathe up here, so we'll find, yeah? But if you can, breathe into the hands here, and then breathe out, and see how much you can take those muscles in towards your spine, yeah? And then breath in again. What's happening to your pelvic floor when you're doing that? Can you take your mind down into that? That's an interesting thing for you, isn't it? Just out of interest, a quick aside there. Do you know the pelvic floor, the muscles of the pelvic floor, the nerves of the pelvic floor? You know the bone, that bone up by there called the pubic bone? Let's not talk about that, okay? On an osteopathy training, a friend of mine went on, they did one A4 piece on the pelvic floor muscles because they're not allowed to talk about it, all right? This name of this bone in Germany is called the Schambein, which means the bone of shame, yeah? So when I teach in Germany, I call it the Glückseligkeitbein, which means Glückseligkeit is the happy, holy states, bliss, all right? So I call it the bliss bone because that outs that shaming of our anatomy that has been done for us by a particular kind of culture. The names of the nerves and that sort of stuff that goes down to the area of the body that shall not be named, yeah? All right? Is named after shame, pudere. Pubic, pudere. It's all shame, 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 shame. All right? And as anybody knows, anybody seen stuff on shame by Brené Brown? Your TED Talk on Brené Brown? We know that shame is toxic. Yeah? Shame destroys creativity. People are scared to stand up if you can't stand up there, you're scared, you're ashamed of what you're offering into the world, you won't do it. Yeah? So shame is not healthy. So we're outing shame. So right now, yeah, I'm saying this because I want you to take your mind down to your pelvic floor shamelessly. All right? Take your mind down to your pelvic floor. Take a deep breath in and find out what's happening in the muscles of your pelvic floor when you breathe in. What goes on in there? What's happening? Yeah? It's moving up and down. That's right. Okay? And the belly's moving. So this whole structure is all interconnected. When the diaphragm moves, the pelvic floor moves. There's this relationship there, internally and externally. This whole balloon, it's like a balloon. When one bit moves, everything else is moving. Okay? Now, I can't get you to squat in here, there's not enough room, but if I could, I would. I'd have you in squats on the floor, okay? Because when you squat and come up to standing, you can feel your pelvic floor working and your breath working. And Ida Rolf, another thing I've done is structural integration, which is like Rolfing, which is kind of deep body fascial release work. And this diaphragm muscle, Ida Rolf, if you haven't heard of it, you should check out Rolfing. Ida Rolf calls the diaphragm the muscle of walking. Because the fascial webs, again, roll through. These are the rotatories here, the muscles in the spine. I'll come back to these in a minute. So you can find the psoas for you. Yeah, a second. There it is. This muscle here runs off all these bottom lumbar vertebrae, so the whole of the base of your spine here, that muscles run down there onto the inside of your legs. They're spinal stabilizers muscles, they're involved in walking. Yeah? And they're deeply, these fibers, the fibers of these, roll directly into the fibers of the diaphragm. It's one interconnected web. Yeah? So your legs are connected to your breathing apparatus. Yeah? We talked about the whole balloon here. Everything's involved in this. So when we're working with conscious breath practices, we're training all these muscles so you can much more effectively and fully breathe. Yeah? Why would you do that? Why would you want to fully and effectively breathe? Has anybody ever experienced something called stress? Anybody done that recently? Do you do it very much? I mean, is it a thing does it happen to you, or do you like it? Do you want it in your life? Yeah. Yes? Okay, great. Stress is useful. Stress is a really good teacher. But you have to know how to use it, because if you don't know how to use it, it'll beat you. It'll destroy your system. Yeah? If you don't know how to use it as a teacher, it will destroy you. Okay? It'll give you, and we know that stress implications now are cancer, cardiovascular conditions, almost every condition of inflammation, how the body's inflaming itself, because what happens in the modern world is people are not understanding anymore how to reduce the inflammation down, how to get rid of inflammation, how to end the stress cascade. And there are hormones now we know that are involved in that. One of them is called resolvin. Oh, there's pelvic floor muscles there for you. Absolutely crucial in breathing. Yeah? So resolvin is one of the hormones that ends the stress cascade. Yeah? And we know now there are ways you can activate that hormone. Some of it through breath work. Yeah? Another is through stretching muscle groups involved in the tension as you breathe and move. Oh, that's kind of yoga, isn't it? Yes. All right? So when we're working with breath work, we do a lot of movement stuff. So for example, if you can't open your ribs up here, yeah, the upper ribs, you can't fully consciously breathe. The position for shoulder blades in the modern world, and I can see a few of you doing it in this room, for example, is here. Medially rotated, yeah? Like that, okay? Anteriorly rotated shoulders. So the top ribs here can't actually open in that position properly. So the upper lobes in the lung can't be used. All right, there we go. That's normal. And the head forward as well, by the way, on the interneck. All right? So getting the shoulder blades down and activated. And again, sometimes you have short, tight muscles in there that just can't be accessed properly because of the habitual postural pattern. So simply moving, doing this is a really good thing to do every day. Just opening up, breathing in, and breathing out, and taking those down. Breathing in. See how big a breath you can take. Okay? Now, to take a full breath, the spine has to rotate as well. You have to have every vertebrae being able to rotate above every other vertebrae. So we have some really nice movement practices. One came from one of my teachers, a guy called James Earls, for example, who's, this kind of movement practice like this, where you're training each vertebral area, each segment, each disc, to rotate above the one below it. Because then, and only then, can the ribs move properly, right? So there's a whole practice in conscious breath work. We're working with the body, we're working with the mind, we're working with focus, we're working with training the mind in awareness, yeah? And we're working with physiology in the system in terms of blood gases, how to change blood gases in the system. Conscious breath is bringing the mind's attention to the process of respiration. I says here attention flow has two qualities, focus in balance with peripheral awareness. You right now, you're peripherally aware. You can feel things around you. Somebody sitting next to you, there's something behind you. You're generally aware of what's going on to a degree around you. You might not know the color of the person's shirt behind you, but there's a certain awareness that somebody's there. Yeah? Where your attention is focused, yeah, you can tune into that. Where your attention is emotionally connected, you'll remember it more. Won't you? Isn't that how it works? Yeah? What we call the past is actually just the stuff we paid attention to that was relatively emotionally significant. Yeah? And then we re-remember it and change it anyway. So whatever story we have about what happened, my lord, is never actually accurate. Yeah. Anyway, focus trains the brain, etc. When we practice conscious breath, we can either different practices. Witness practice I mentioned to you briefly. Witness practice where you just sit and pay attention. A really good practice to cultivate. So you can do that if you wanted to. It's rather boring, but you know something? To get good at something, you're going to have to go through boredom. What are you good at? What do you do really well? Tennis, anyone? Writing. Volleyball? What?
Writing.
Pardon? Writing. Do you ever have to get bored?
Sometimes it's hard. Not always boring.
With my kids, I say with my kids, and some of them might remember this, some of them hate me for this, okay? What I say to my kids is, when they tell me they're bored, I say, well, stop boring yourself. Why are you boring yourself? Why are you boring yourself with life? They don't like it. Yeah? But it's functional, because it brings home the fact that we are doing that, unconsciously choosing to bore ourselves with things. Yeah? Oh yes, some of the reasons for doing practice conscious breathing, yeah. Healing. Healing. Did you know the heart is the most electromagnetically active organ in your body? If you think about it beating all the time, yeah? It's 5,000 times more electromagnetically active than the brain. Okay? This is from the Heart Math Institute. You heard of the Heart Math Institute? Yeah. Heart rate variability, this kind of thing. It's becoming pretty big. Yeah, it's pretty massive. So people are looking at the way the heart rate changes when you breathe. Yeah? So if you take an in-breath, with the pressure changes, there's a decrease in pressure there, there's an increase in the beat of the heart. Maybe you can feel it inside if you can tune inside. When you breathe out, ideally, that heart rate should slow down. Yeah? So on every breath, the heart rate should be variable. In-breath should increase, out-breath should decrease. Yeah? And the more variability there is between that in-breath and the out-breath, the healthier your heart is, and the healthier the whole system is. Okay? So people are beginning to use heart rate variability. You can get little devices. I didn't bring mine with me. You get little devices that clip on your ear and you can measure your heart rate variability. Yeah? They're really useful because, again, like I said, people are testing their health now in terms of HRV. Right? Really good thing to do. How do you affect HRV? Do you want to guess? Breathing. All right? The kind of breathing the Heart Math Institute talk about is a thing called coherent breathing, which I'm going to teach you very quickly. It's really, really simple. All right? So again, come out of that gentle slump off the back of the chair and sit up a bit tall. All right? Right. And you can have your eyes closed or not. Yeah? Again, if you do close your eyes, it takes you into a slightly deeper state of relaxation, just into an alpha state. Yeah? The edge of an alpha state, because there's further more to go. Bring your attention to the breath. Yeah? And in coherent breathing, the thing that matters really is the rhythm. Right? So if you just take a long, slow breath in, yeah? And you have about the same length of out breath, or you can extend the out breath. If you want to deactivate your system and bring your system down into a state of relaxation, you double the length of the out breath. Right? So that's slowing the heart. Yeah? That's deactivating or down-regulating the system. If you want to balance them, you can do that too. I'll talk about energizing breath in a minute. Okay? So this breath where we're working with around about 4 to 6 counts on the inhale, so it's about 1 and 2, 3 and 4, maybe 5, maybe 6 even on the inhale, and the same on the exhale, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 5, maybe 6, maybe, yeah, something like that. And just get a steady rhythm that works for your body. Yeah? So you're not trying to force yourself into the count, you're trying to find out what works for your body, what actually feels good. You know what works because it feels good, it feels right. You trust that feeling. And complete the out-breath, finish the out-breath, feel this sort of feeling of the end of the out-breath, the end of the in-breath. Okay? Okay so far? Great, let's stop there for a second. That's basic coherent breathing, really simple. Okay? And what they're saying is that if you practice 5 minutes of that a day, it's not a lot, 5 minutes a day, 3 times a day. So they're calling it the 3-3-65. Medicine is the 3-3-65, okay? So that's 5 minutes a day, 5 minutes, I beg your pardon, at a time, 3 times a day. Okay? And if you do that, your system becomes what they call coherent, which means that your brain, with all its busy, stressful thoughts, thinking about money, work, and all the other things that have to happen, is syncing with the heart. Synchronizing with the heart and syncing with the other super important part of your nervous system, which is what?
Gut.
Your guts. That's right. The guts are the oldest, apart from cellular level intelligence, the guts are the oldest bit of your neural architecture. We're talking around about 500 million years old. Super robust. Yeah? We have these funny yoga practices that I teach where you do funny things where you make your tummy go round and round like this, okay? Which makes it all work properly. Because you want to stay in good flow, don't you? You want it to work properly and stay in good flow and not get hurty, achy, irritable bowels or anything of that kind. All right? You also have to pay attention to what you eat, don't you? And how often you eat. Yeah? So what you eat, how often you eat, how much you eat, when you eat, that kind of thing. All right? But when you do that and make it all work well and it stays in flow, you've got really good health. Yeah? They say in Ayurveda, in Indian flow medicine, that if your digestive power is weak, you will be ill because you can't absorb. It's all well and good putting something in your mouth, but putting it in your mouth doesn't mean it's absorbed across into the bloodstream, does it? No? All right? So having those centers, those basic places, that ancient neurology of the guts, yeah, the most electromagnetic organ of the heart, and the brain synced with each other, fully synchronized and coherent, is a powerful thing to do to look after yourself. And the way to do that is to do it 3 times a day, 5 minutes at a time. Okay? And by the way, there isn't a way out. Just so you know. You can wait and take pharmacological things later on if you want to sort out the problems later on. That's a choice. But that's kind of the other choice. All right? If you start at the bottom, I'll take you through another breath practice in a second, okay? Should we do another one? But if you can start down here, get the belly expanded, and then lift up to where it feels good. But I'm going to change it in a minute, okay? Because what will happen on that basic breath practice we're doing there is I wasn't taking you through any sort of respiratory muscles. I didn't talk about respiratory muscle on that, but we're going to do that for a minute, okay? All right. Should we try it? Yeah. All right. You're willing to go down to the pelvic floor, are you? Great stuff, because we're going to have to go there. All right? So what happens on the pelvic floor when you breathe in a belly breath like this? And a belly breath is really good just to chill out. Yeah? Just putting your hands on your belly if you're feeling stressed and just breathing into your belly is a nice way of reducing anxiety. Does anybody here suffer with anxiety? You telling me there's a Brexit election coming up, you don't have anxiety? Donald Trump's in power and you do not have anxiety? I mean, come on. Yeah? Climate emergency, this kind of thing, yeah? And you don't have anxiety. Any sensible human being would have some kind of anxiety, I reckon, don't you reckon? Yeah? All right. How do you deal with anxiety? Real simple, quick anxiety medicine. Are you ready? Take a full deep breath in. Hold the breath in your body, yeah? Just push the diaphragm down, squeeze your tummy in, pull your pelvic floor up and squeeze your tummy like that, squeezing from top, bottom, middle, front, everywhere. Squeezing, 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 and gently release. Do that 3 times. Yeah? Where do you feel anxiety? Where do you do anxiety? In the belly, come on. Yeah? Down here. When you think about how you feel in your guts when you're really seriously anxious. Yeah? Where do you do joy? Do you know where you do joy? In your guts. Yeah? Most of the serotonin, which is the happiness neurotransmitter in your body, is made down here, which is why it's so important to keep this stuff well. Right? That's why people eat cake, by the way, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah? Because they're feeling a bit low. Maybe they're doing a job they don't really love doing. Yeah? So a nice solution to kick off some serotonin is eat a nice mixture of sugar and fat and some cheap carbohydrate, chuck it on a mix and put it inside. You get a temporary serotonin release, feel a little bit better for a little while, and then feel shit for eating the cake. Because it wasn't even very good anyway, it didn't taste very nice. But it's just a temporary way of, yeah? There's better ways of doing it, like with the breath. Okay, so that's, if you do 3 or 4 like that, but little simple breath holds like that, what you're doing is you're squashing the nerve endings that do anxiety, you're pressurizing them slightly, and it'll just give you a temporary relief from that, because it's not nice when it goes on and on. All right, let's do another practice. Are you ready? Close your eyes again. It's just useful to close your eyes. You don't have to close your eyes. If you want to not close your eyes, just half close them. Everybody likes closing their eyes. You don't have to. Okay? So, this time, I want you to imagine yourself like some kind of wild creature, like a wolf or any other animal you prefer. It could be a unicorn, I don't mind. It could be, an imaginative creature. If it was my daughter, it would be a unicorn. Right? So whatever you want. And now then imagine you're in the woods or somewhere, or up on the mountaintop, and you want to smell the world around you, because that's where you get a lot of information about what's going on in the world. And I want you to spread your nostrils wide as you breathe in, like really wide, and slow that breath down. And notice how much you can savor the air on the in-breath like that. Yeah? It doesn't matter if your mouth wrinkles up a little bit. And then hold that in-breath for a micro moment. Yeah, like a tiny quarter of a second. And then breathe out slowly and feel the out breath. Feel the muscles changing as you're breathing out. Feel the ribs and muscles releasing. Feel the belly squeezing in. And at the end of the out breath, squeeze that belly in, finish the out breath, squeeze the belly right in so you get the muscular end of the breath. Muscles at the bottom of the tummy squeeze in. And now squeeze your pelvic floor upwards a little bit, the front and middle of the pelvic floor. Squeeze those muscles up. Remember, they're so implicated in breathing. And hold that in and breathe in, gently pulsing those muscles up. And notice that your ribs open more. Can you feel that? Yeah? So follow those ribs open. See if you can open up all the 11 rib spaces on that held in breath, lengthening to the back of the head, jaw relaxed and soft. Full deep inhale, spreading those nostrils wide. Hold it for a micro moment and breathe slowly out. Breathe slowly, slowly, super slow. Don't rush it. Everybody's rushing. Slow down. Yeah? And again, just finish with the out breath. Squeeze the pelvic floor in up and see how slowly and fully you can breathe in. Savor that air. It might be the last one. At some point in time, it's going to be the last breath. Yeah? So paying attention to the breath is a really lovely thing to do. Really enjoy it while you've got it. You know what I mean? Yeah? And then out breath again. Complete that out breath. All right, so far? And again. We can add to this because we can put waves on the breath, but I'm not taking you there tonight. We'll do that some other time if we get a chance, all right? But get that feeling of that full breath where you're completing the breath and you're really opening the chest up then by pressurizing from the base with the pelvic floor slightly, pre-tensioning the base of the belly slightly, and that enables the diaphragm to change its function so you can get all those lobes of the ribs, lobes of the lungs open, the ribs opened on that inhale. Yeah? Spreading the nostril wide. Another really helpful thing to do is put the tip of the tongue behind your top teeth. Put the tip of the tongue, just curl it softly, put it behind the top teeth, and then relax the jaw. Yeah? Yeah? Because if you think about English language is a very funny language. Because the English language, and by the way, one of the reasons why we can do breath work at all is because we can speak. Right? Conscious breath work is based on the principle that we can talk. All right? This ventral soft surface facing each other. Here we go. Ventral soft surface, okay? Navigating the social dimension, the social synapse, as it were, yeah? For us human beings who are tribal, whether we like it or not, yeah? Right. To do that, what we have is we have vocal cords and languaging systems and cerebral cortex to make all that work properly so we can do this interpersonal space. Yeah? Does that make sense? Yeah? So if you take a breath in and just say some words and notice that when you do words, it's on an out breath. Try it. Just make some words, make some sound. Just do it. Yeah, just talk about anything at all. It doesn't matter. It could be purple unicorns frolicking across the cosmos. I don't mind. Yeah? Yeah? You could tell me your, PIN numbers for your bank card. I don't mind. Whatever you want. Yeah? All right? It's on an out breath, yeah? So when we talk, we do it on an out breath. It's 10 minutes, thank you. Modulated out breath. Okay. So it's because we have that capacity, because we need to have that capacity to be able to break up the tones and put out those communicated resonances, vibration through the air that somebody else's ears can pick up and translate, that we can do breath work. Yeah? What we can do with breath work is we can radically affect our nervous system to stay well. Like I'm talking about, yeah? Now, Wim Hof's a great guy, yeah? Now, I don't like the way he does breath holding. It's a bit grubby as far as I'm concerned. Don't tell him that. I'll tell him when I see him, all right? Simply because when he does the release from the breath hold, he gets people to do this kind of gasping thing. Yeah? Now, which bit of the brainstem is kicking off there? Well, the medulla. So when we do breath holding in yoga, what we do is we do the holding, and then you've got to release the muscles that are doing any activity, consciously flood the system with relaxation. You smile, and you release loads of funky neurotransmitters, yeah? And then you do a conscious in-breath like we just did, like the wolf breath. So the bit of the brain that's making you breathe in then is the left prefrontal cortex, which is the most evolved bit of the brain. So what you're doing with a simple breath practice like that is you're linking, yeah, different bits of your neurology together in a conscious process so they can talk to each other. All right? That is pretty cool. What else? I've only got to here, look. soothing and calming, energizing. We've got energizing breaths. Really fantastic practice for early in the morning is Kapalabhati, which means shining skull. All right? It's a great practice for energizing, for getting the fluids moving, for getting cerebrospinal fluid moving. Yeah? Cerebrospinal fluid is the fluid that flows around the spinal cord, all around the brain. So you get your brain switched on in the morning. Don't need coffee first thing. Coffee is later if you want it, or don't bother. Don't need it. You don't need it. It's a choice. Yeah? I've seen people in London when I was at a conference in London, you know, and there's the local coffee shop was shut, and people coming in, they're kind of like grey ghosts like this, and somebody came in with coffee, and all these people going, oh, coffee. You know? Coffee addicts, terrible. Oh, transforming suffering and difficulty into ease and delight. Manifesting. Oh, we talked about that already. Do you remember that? Using the breath and technology to focus and direct minds, creating a life in alignment, purpose and service. Why else? What else do you want? Do you want to live a life of purpose and service? Service is a fantastic shaver. Saver is a Sanskrit word for that, which means you're here doing what you're doing because it serves humanity in some way. It's for the betterment of all beings everywhere. Yeah? In yoga, there's a thing called pure motivation in Tantra yoga. It's called pure motivation, which is simply the reason you do what you do is because it's for the greater good. Isn't that cool? Yeah? Why else would you do it? Just to make a buck? Oh God, how boring. How unevolved. Literally. Yeah? Enabling creativity. Yeah? Liberating, going beyond personal and cultural condition to find the default awareness that grounds those installed mental formation, blah, blah, blah. Liberating. Yeah? You can undo selfing mechanisms with breath. It's really neat. You can make them so they are transparent. Right? You know, we are riddled with selfies. Self. Yeah? Self. Me. I. Me. Mine. Right? And what these practices can do is take us into a space where those become transparent so we can see them, so we can be playful with them and creative with them. We don't have to be the same person every day. Literally. Because we recreate ourselves. We're constantly changing and growing and open to that possibility with the arising of new information, new relationships, yeah, new creative drives within us. Integrating more, anyway, lots of good reasons for practice. Can't remember what the next one is. Oh, Vegeltone talked about that bit, HRV, so I'll leave that. There's no need to go on that. Yeah. Talked about that, it's good. I've only got a few minutes. Talked about that, enteric awareness, emotional freedom. Emotional freedom. Remember I talked about the diaphragm being used for emotions? Yeah? You can create the space where you clear out emotional debris from the system. And ideally, some of the practices we do, yeah, in conscious breathwork, certainly the stuff I teach, yeah, are ways of making sure that we don't carry emotional debris from one day to the next. Yeah? Now, I'm going to be a bit cheeky for a minute, but did any of you not wipe your bum this morning? No. Did any of you not clean your teeth? Why? I'm sorry about that. Your dentist will be onto you.
Yeah, I knew I wasn't going to be around so many people.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, okay. Let you off this time. Tomorrow, clean your teeth. All right. Yeah, but there's a point in time when you didn't. There's a point in time when somebody wiped your bum for you. Yeah. Yeah. And you learned to clean your teeth. Yeah. And there might be a point in time when it happens again. Do you know what I mean? But it's yeah. All right? So for a yoga practitioner, doing practices like the enteric awareness practice, all right, which is on the Mind Mastery course, which is up that thing, by the way, it's on that course. So if you've won that raffle, you get access to that. Getting access to those practices, doing those practices is just like doing any other kind of ablution. It just makes sense. Yeah? Why would you live a life with lots of emotional debris floating around your system from one day to the next? It just doesn't make any sense. Yeah? So these kind of conceptual understandings that are manifest through practices which are all deeply connected with breath. Why is breath so important in all these practices? You got any idea? Sorry?
It's essential to life.
It's essential to life. What else? There's another thing. I'll tell you what it is. It's the magic key. Breath is the magic key. All right? Because it links thinking with feeling and the body and the environment. Yeah? Every breath you've breathed in tonight has been breathed out by the person next to you, whether you like it or not. Yeah? We are deeply interconnected. Yeah? You know, actually, you're just recycled trees. Yeah? On a breath basis. Most of your body is made of hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen. Carbon as in carbon dioxide. Excuse me, isn't that air? Yes. Yeah? So most of you is actually air. In my case, it's hot air, but you get the idea. Yeah? So, you know, when we feel into the system in that way, we understand, you know, the deep interrelatedness of all life. And breath is a way of taking us directly into that experience. When we breathe consciously for long enough, the parts of the brain that give us the illusion of being a separate life form, like I'm separate to everything else, yeah, it dissolves slightly. It suspends it for long enough for that joke to be seen for what it is, a trick of your biology. All right? Now, of course, what we want is we want more and more of that, because we want all human beings on this planet to be able to recognize that simple fact, so that we can actually start treating each other and all other life forms with basic decency and respect. What do you think? Yeah? So it's a good strategy. Conscious breath work. Our peak performance. I was talking about that, wasn't I? Peak performance and optimal flow. Yeah? Lifespan is great. Health span is great. Health span is how well you stay as you age. Yeah? I don't know how old you are. I'm planning to live to at least 900. Extremely well. Peak performance. Accessing states of optimal flow. The other beautiful thing about the breath, why it's the magic key, is because if you take a breath and you pay attention to your breath, there's one thing guaranteed: that breath is right in this moment, right here, right now. An optimal flow is being so fully in what you're doing. We talked about the bubble earlier on, remember? Optimal flow is about being so fully present and so fully in what you're doing, there isn't anything else other than the peripheral awareness. It's all there. You're not sort of blocked off from that, but you're so in it, and the breath is that moment. The breath is always that moment. This breath now is the moment. So when you get used to being with the breath and breathing and not into some random thought process which is navigating the future, yeah, anticipation, apprehension, that kind of thing, or living in the past, or memory, or busy creating some story as to why everything is like this and poor me or great me or whatever kind of thing we do in there, yeah, or the storytelling, the meaning making, all the other jazz we do, which the brain is so wonderful at, 1,000 trillion synapses, all buzzing around trying to create some sort of momentary self-oriented philosophy. Yeah, breathe. Take a breath, that's what's real. Yeah? Body, the breath. Smriti, remembrance, presence. Come back to what's real. So the breath is that magic key to bring us back. All right? By the way, some of the science on it says that when we breathe and lift the breath up through the upper passageways of the nose, which I took you through, the wild breathing, yeah, that activates your limbic system in a different way, and you can access joy. If you mouth breathe, you don't get that. Nose is for breathing through. Mouth is for eating. Simple. Yeah? Yeah? If you want to access joy, by the way, when you breathe in with a bit of performance as well, you get nitrogen oxide released in the nasal passages, and that increases oxygen uptake in the lungs. Okay? Oxygenates the tissues better. Oh, yeah. Why? Because it does. Daily discipline. It's the only way. All right? Sorry, I don't use the only way terms very often. I think I use it twice. Yeah? The only way to liberate your diaphragm is with Mahabandha, daily discipline. 3-3-6-5 at least, bare minimum. Over there, mitochondria. Do you know those things? You've got some of those babies in your body? Every single cell of your body, apart from red blood cells, I think. Yeah? They are the energy-making factories in your body. They're in the cells. All right? They are amazing. By the way, just in terms of interconnection, we all have the same mitochondrial DNA. Right? Chromosomal DNA, we're all different. Yeah? Mitochondrial DNA, we all have exactly the same mitochondrial DNA from some ancient female about 6 million years ago. Right? So we're all related, whether you like it or not. All of us. Every single human being, without question. I think that's probably about enough for tonight. What do you reckon?